if they're gonna use an individual, this one guy that the most of the world would think is homeless. He literally said to me, he's like, you've been praying, and I'm here to let you know they are hearing you, and I'm the closest one listening, and your prayers are being heard. And so I was meeting these kind of people wherever I went. And like I said, like this guy to the world, he looks like a homeless guy. And meanwhile, to me, he's telling me stuff that only me and God knows.
See, that's like a movie scene right there.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so he's the one that I told you about that told me, he's like, you have to tell your story. And he's like, you're going to be leading these big sharing groups and telling your story. And what was funny is I knew that he was true because I'd had that message, but the small me, the reluctant messenger that doesn't want to be like, I was scared to death. And that's also how I knew he was telling me the truth.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Eric Taylor, BigEAstro, back with another amazing episode of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast, episode 272, with such an amazing guest. He's a multiple NDE survivor. He hosts Hawaii Ions. He really hosts other podcasts as well with Consciousness Network on near-death experiences. And he is extremely spiritual and intuitive. I present to you today my friend, Shaun Lether. How are you today, Shaun?
Great, Eric. It's nice to see you, and thanks for inviting me on here.
Well, listen, we got to kind of connect on and share with the audience how we met. And we definitely have a lot of things in common with our NDEs. Probably spiritual mothers too. We'll get to that. But tell everybody what does it mean, near-death experience, and then how did you not only come to know what that means, but when did you have your first NDE?
Well, a near-death experience is when you leave your body and you in essence die. Usually it's brought on by trauma or impending death, in my case in the ICU. And most of us, we either get a choice to come back or we're told it's not your time and we're sent back, which is why they call it near death. My first one was when I was 6 months old. I didn't know at that time. I knew that, I grew up knowing that, I was in the ICU and they were all sure I was going to die. But it was the after effects from an early age. I just had this knowing that I knew it wasn't me. And I had this communication with the divine at an early age, like 3-4 years old. And so, yeah, it affected most of my life.
So when you say communications, was it like seeing spirits or ghosts, or were you hearing sounds in your ear or visualizing things? I try to, get into the mind of like a little 3 to 4 year old. How did that play out for you in like the physical 3D reality?
So when I was really young, it was a knowing. It was a knowing and communication where I would hear voices. I didn't necessarily see anything.
Okay.
And but it was a knowing because I would know things and I didn't know, and I knew that it wasn't me, but I didn't know where it was coming from.
That's really fascinating. So are your spiritual gifts, do you feel that they come from the NDE, Or is it in the lineage? Because I think you would remember you telling me that your mom was really spiritual. Share some insights on your mother and even the spiritual connection that you guys had and also still have.
Yeah, so my mom actually had a near-death experience in around 1975, which is the year that Raymond Moody wrote his book, and he actually coined the term near-death experience. So most people didn't know what it was. But so from an early age, my mom, she was one of those that was sent back, and she really didn't want to be here. And that was kind of traumatic for me because many times she would talk to her dad who had died and tell him she wanted to go home. But my mom and I had this amazing close relationship. And somehow, so we grew up Mormon, and in the Mormon church, you're not necessarily supposed to do astrology, or at least back then. But she was a master astrologer. She did all of her charts and everything by hand. And nobody in our house was allowed to go on a date or have friends until she did their chart.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she was very cool in that way. So she did my chart and, at an early age told me what I could eat and what I couldn't eat. And like, this was like in, the 70s. So it's like, it was amazing how advanced she was. And she also predicted that at 50 that I would have, back then she said death or something transforming. But she also made sure that I was not afraid of it, whatever was going to happen. And ironically, she was correct because I later had my major, profound near-death experience when I was 50.
Okay, wow. So, all right, we got a couple things. So first, you are the Capricorn Sun, Aries Moon, Libra rising. But you've got that Uranus and Pluto in the 12th house, which makes me think about and visualizes your NDE and being in the hospital and all that. But I'm kind of curious, before we get to 50 and that NDE, which is so deep, what sign was your mother?
Aries.
Wow. And you literally have the Aries moon conjunct Saturn. So have you now as an adult kind of realized that you have, definitely some past life karma with your mother?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some of the past life, and also growing up, the stuff that she taught me that she didn't necessarily teach my other brothers and sisters. I mean, from an early age, not just the astrology, but iridology. And she, at 12, took me and we learned how to astral project.
What?
And yeah, so all the stuff that not a typical Mormon mother would do in Salt Lake City. She was amazingly advanced, and somehow she knew. That's what's so cool as I look at it all now, is there was this knowing that she had, because it wasn't like she took all my other brothers and sisters to learn this stuff. It was me and her, and we had a certain closeness that, not only when she was alive, but within 24 hours of when she passed in 2015, she started coming to me.
Okay, so she passes away in 2015. I'm sure all the kids were upset, but do you think because of your bond that affected you in a different way? And has she come to visit any of your siblings, or have they shared that with you or not?
So yes, she has. She visits all of them, whether they know it or not.
Okay.
But there was really one cool, very cool experience with a sister of mine that lives in South Carolina. And when I was trying to convince all my sisters that she's there, you just need to work on hearing her. My sister was working in the yard. She was weeding and everything. And so my mom's with me, and I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and my sister's sitting there saying, oh, she'll never come to me, or something like that. And all of a sudden my mom says, tell her that she needs to deadhead, the zinnias. She needs to deadhead the zinnias. And literally my sister was working by the zinnias that needed to be deadheaded. So it was very cool. And, you know, so my sister realized, yeah, she's with her.
Wow. So you just told her, but she knows that there was no way you could know that because you're on the phone.
Right. I'm in
Told her
Hawaii.
mom
She's in
said,
South Carolina.
oh my God.
I didn't know what she was working on. But yeah, my mom said that, you know, which was pretty cool. So, and there's been a lot of that, you know, where my mom will give me messages to tell my sisters, and they will usually, it will make sense to them.
So this is really powerful. Now, we're still going to get to that NDE, but have you, as an adult, have you always been able to receive messages from the other side, and especially from people that have passed away?
Well, here's the thing. So as a kid, I would get messages, and I was very connected, and like I told you.
Right.
But I was in a very dysfunctional like household, and there was a lot of fighting, and my dad was an alcoholic, and my mom had mental health issues, partly because, you know, when you have a near-death experience and all these spiritual experiences in the 70s, and people don't know what it is, the way that they would treat them is put them in mental institutions. So she had some issues. And so because of all that, what would happen is I would get these messages telling me that things were going to happen. And my dad wouldn't believe me. And literally, I mean, I got this vision that we were going to be robbed. We'd been boating and we stopped at a diner, and I got a message like, it's going to be robbed. And I told my dad. He didn't believe me. I was 8 years old. Sure enough, later, after we finished dinner, we went out, the whole boat had been robbed. And later, when I was about 12, I had this vision that our barn was going to burn down. Big, expensive barn. And he didn't listen again. Sure enough, the barn caught on fire. Cost him like $200,000 because he didn't have insurance on it. And so what happened is I kind of stopped trusting myself.
Wait, but after that actually happened, he didn't sort of change his tune to acknowledge your gift?
No, that's what's crazy is he would say stuff like, I should have listened, but then it would happen again and he wouldn't listen. And that's really how my whole life is I would see these things, and then because I was, you know, young, and these are my caretakers, and they didn't necessarily believe what I was saying. And so I stopped trusting myself for a while. So it wasn't until my mom started coming to me again after she died, that's when I had to start trusting it, because the things that she was doing, and then I started having other experiences with other people that had crossed over. There was a fire here in a building, and I was laying there. This was after my mom had come to me about 6 months, and I was like laying there. I wasn't like asleep, and I was just in that middle realm between sleep and awakeness.
Right.
And there'd been this fire, and it was the next day, and all of a sudden these spirits come in, a blonde guy wearing an aloha shirt, and then his a lady, which I thought was his mother, but I wasn't sure. And she was lower than him. So it told me like she was in a wheelchair or something.
Right.
So they were very confused, and they didn't know what had happened to them. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, these people died in the fire. And I didn't know what to say. Like, I really didn't, because I'd only had these experiences with my mother. And so I said, I can't help you. I don't know what to tell you. There's got to be somebody around here. I wasn't even like, I was so clueless. I didn't even think like, well, tell them to go to the light or something. And so anyway, this was Saturday. The fire happened on Friday. On Tuesday, in the newspaper, they listed the people that had died. And it was literally the guy, he worked for Aloha Airlines. They had a picture of him in his Aloha shirt, blonde hair, and his mother was in a wheelchair. She was crippled, and they couldn't get out, so they hid under the bed and died.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I started having experiences like that constantly. And this was before my last profound NDE. It was in between two NDEs, but it started just getting stronger and stronger.
So mom passing in 2015, that was before the NDE.
Right. So yeah, so I had an NDE that brought me to Hawaii and made me stay here in 2004. But in 2018, I had a profound NDE, the one that really changed everything for me.
So what happened?
Well, okay, so what was cool? So, and my mother was she came here to help me with this, but she wouldn't tell me. But what was kind of cool is I was always asking her, so why are you here? Like, why now? Like, and she said she was here to be the mother she couldn't be when she was alive. And the other thing that was very cool is she showed me her whole life. So she'd been, there was a lot of trauma, and sometimes she would be abusive when I was growing up, but sometimes she was, really amazing too.
Right.
So she showed me her life from a kid. And once I had that 360 view of her and her life, it was like instant forgiveness, but there was no forgiveness needed. So,
but let me ask you this, because that's really deep and fascinating. When she showed you her life, right, from like a young girl, what was it? Were you awake or were you asleep? Was it in a dream?
no, I was awake.
Really?
Yeah, all my everything that I experienced with her, I was always awake.
You see, and what's so fascinating, right? You have that Uranus, Pluto, and Virgo, but it's trining that Capricorn sun in the fourth house. So that's like that kind of easy flow of energy that like would allow you to tap into your mother, her lineage, and kind of have this spiritual communication even from the other side.
Yeah.
It's
It's
plus the
to me
fact,
it
like you
is.
said, that sometimes she was like super nice and sometimes she was kind of rough. That's that Aries moon, right? Conjunct Saturn.
Yeah,
So
she tried to kill me when I was a kid.
oh, wait. Okay. So now we're delaying the NDE one more time. Wait. Your mother tried to kill you? Explain. Like, what happened?
Yeah, like I said, there was mental health
Oh
issues.
gosh, I'm so sorry.
and and so I haven't said this a whole lot, but so my mom would check out. And when she checked out, other entities took over. And you can call them demonic entities or whatever.
Okay.
And they
And
were
would you
dark
see it visually on her face?
I totally saw it.
Wow.
I would actually. So you know how you may know that people with a lot of trauma, which I've had a lot, they joke about it. So I would joke about it. It's like, okay, here we go. Her head's going to start spinning around, and she's going to be spitting pea green soup. Remember Exorcist?
Yeah.
And I'm joking, but that's the way I would deal with it. And so so she would literally, these entities would take over, and I'd see it in her eyes.
But did the other siblings, did they recognize or see this, or how did they view it compared to you?
They actually all recognized it. None of them were like, when I, like, they agreed with me when I said it. And in fact, I'll go back in that. So after my mom appeared to me, I told one sister. It took me a while. I didn't tell anybody for a while. But then I told that sister. Well, that sister, because they all knew that I felt that she was possessed. So about 3 months after my mom died, my sister, she'd said something in an email about all the times that I thought my mom was possessed. So I felt ready to talk about it because I didn't want to talk about it before. And because it felt like, what's weird is I'm having contact with my mother. So it feels like I'm talking about her, and she knows what I'm saying.
Oh my
So
God.
it felt really weird, and I just wasn't ready. So once I was ready, I started literally in an email. I'm talking to my sister, typing, and it's about when my mom had these demonic episodes, and I told my sister, I was telling my sister that my mom had showed me. My mom told me that's right, that I was right. All the times that I thought she was possessed, she was. And what she told me is that life was really hard for her and she just couldn't handle things. And so she also, sometimes she was addicted to prescription pills and stuff. And so she would just check out. And when she checked out, these other entities would take over. And so I'm sitting there typing this to my sister, and I'm telling her what my mom showed me, because she showed me how this would happen. And as I was typing to my sister, my mother grabbed my left arm. And you know what your mother, her touch feels like, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's from the other side, there's no doubt. So
you just gave me chills right there. That's like,
yeah, and I still have this email. It's really kind of cool, because so I'm typing the email and I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. Mother is here. She just grabbed my arm. And so I'm typing to my sister as my mom's grabbed my arm.
Did she not want you to send it?
No, she was just letting me know she is really here.
Okay.
Like she's like, so I'm very hard to convince. I need lots of evidence.
That's that Capricorn.
Yeah. I mean, she even makes jokes to me. She said to me before, she's like, what do you need, a burning bush? Which is a reference to the Bible.
I know.
And she's saying it because I'm so stubborn. And it's like she does these amazing things. And then 3 days later in the past, I would doubt it. So that's why she was grabbing my arm to confirm, to let me know. So here's what's really cool, is about 45 minutes after I finished this email, I went to make an espresso, and I went and I looked down at the coffee maker, and on my left arm, the hair's standing straight up, and on the right arm, it's flat. And so to me, that Capricorn mind that needs proof, I'm like, okay, this was an energy source. The fact that your hair's standing up on the left-hand side and it's laying down on the right-hand side, you encountered some sort of an energy source.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
But yeah, so she would do all, and she still does things like that, just because I'm one of those people that I can have these amazing spiritual experiences, and not as much now as in the past. But then the ego will like talk me out of, like, oh, that didn't really happen, but then she'll come. Okay,
so I want to get into this big final NDE, but I want to ask you, leading up to it, what did you know in terms of what your mother shared? Like, what did you really know about near-death experiences before you actually went through it yourself? Like, were you like very aware? Because like for myself, I honestly knew nothing of NDEs.
Right.
I just never watched. I didn't know. I know that people would be in coma and people died and came back. I've seen different shows, but like I didn't know any details. I hadn't read any books. I didn't know anything. So what was it like for you before your second and third NDE? Were you already aware of what they were and how?
So I was aware, but I was the same. I didn't read about them. I really didn't care about them.
Right.
So I had experienced one in 2004, which is the one that made me stay in Hawaii. And even though I experienced it, I just didn't fully process what it actually meant.
And that one was nowhere near as intense as the one you're going to share, or
right? So that one. So you know, that I believe these near-death experiences, they're not like the ends, they're not like, they're a process for me especially. And so for me, like, they're almost like wake-up calls even. And so I'll give you a little bit of background. In 2003, I was in Los Angeles, and I had 4 degrees and with honors, and I had a successful landscape company, and I bought all these houses in LA, Palm Springs, and Big Bear. And I thought that I had achieved, you know, the American dream, like what everybody thinks you want.
Right.
And so I was at my house in Big Bear, and it was Christmas, and I love snow at Christmas. And I had a Hummer, a big Hummer, and I just put in satellite radio, and it snowed. And I put in Cher, the song Believe, you know, that Believe.
Yeah.
And I drove around the lake, and I just put in all these like Viking appliances, and the world should be perfect, right? I mean, I had everything that I thought that I wanted. And as I'm listening to that song, I realized I'm not happy. I have everything that I thought I wanted. And so within 3 months of that experience, it was almost as if I asked for what was going to happen, because I was flying to Hawaii, and I was coming to look at a property that I was going to buy. I wasn't going to move here or anything. I just wanted, and I had an abdominal hernia. I used to do Gold's Gym's commercials and act, and had a perfect body and worked out all the time. And I developed an abdominal hernia. Ooh. And I didn't know how dangerous that they can be. I would just kind of joke about it because it just looked like an extra ab. But on the plane from Los Angeles to Honolulu, it strangulated. And what that means is it kinked, and nothing was going through, including blood supply and everything. And so I started to die, not knowing that that's what was happening.
While you're on the plane?
Yeah. What was funny is the minutes the plane took off, I started getting really sick, and I'm like gonna throw up. And so as the plane's taking off, I ran to the bathroom, and of course the flight attendants are all yelling at me and everything. And I just had a salad and just, you know, barfed salad all over the bathroom. But literally, so for the next 6 hours, I was in excruciating pain, but I didn't know what was happening. And then I stayed in Honolulu for a night, and then I went over to the Big Island where I was buying the property, the Big Island of Hawaii. And back then I was only into holistic stuff, not Western medicine. So I went to a homeopathic doctor. She gave me IV and fluid, and she should have known, because I had my chest was turning black and blue. So she should have known, and she didn't know. And the next day, my friend made me go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room. They knew immediately. And
see, that's when I believe in Western medicine. When you are near death, or you have a car crash or a broken bone, you got to go to a regular hospital.
Right. Oh, trust me now. I do. Yeah. But like I said, I was in this period of no Western medicine, which in a way was good, because I had no antibiotics for a long time.
Right. Totally good. Yeah.
So I responded fast. But so anyway, as they were hauling me in, I was begging. I'm like, can't you do something and just send me back to LA? Because I'm here in this jungle hospital in Hilo. And so I started blacking out, and I knew that I was crashing, and all of a sudden it's all dark, and there's this bright light, but it's up here. And it's like, somehow I knew what that meant. And the whole time I'm like, I can't die. I've got way too much to do. And I said, and I won't accept it. And I'll be a ghost here, and I'll haunt I'll be haunting this hospital here in the jungle, and nobody's going to find me. And so so it was funny because I kept fighting going to the light. And at some point, I couldn't fight it anymore. I went to the light. Next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital there. And
how long were you out for? Like, how long were you?
I guess probably about like 10 hours.
Okay.
It wasn't all that long.
But let me ask you this though, because this is really fascinating to me. 04, did you have a cell phone yet? I know some people did, some people didn't. And did you notify your mother and siblings?
Yeah, I had a cell phone by then. And yeah, and a friend that was there with me actually notified all of them.
Okay. So your friend, you had your friend. Okay, good.
Yeah. And so in that, what was interesting is when I came out of it, it was so interesting because again, I didn't know what NDEs were, really. I mean, I'd heard of them, but I just didn't know what they were like. And I just came out of it with this pure love and literally asking people for forgiveness. Like I wanted to be a better person. And but it still wasn't as transformational as the one that happened in 2018. But what it was is it got me set on a path. And because my stomach was all necrotic, they'd had to cut out 7 feet of dead intestines.
What?
And it was all bacterial. And so they had to keep my stomach open for 6 months.
Are you kidding me?
So I couldn't leave. Yeah, literally, my stomach was kept open where the wound is, because if they sew it up, the infection will grow back again. So they have to keep it open, you keep it clean, and let it close on its own. And so, yeah, it's a 6-month process. And so it was funny.
How does that work with food and eating and drinking?
Well, your intestines are not open, but your stomach is. Like, it's, I mean, imagine your stomach can be cut open and the intestines are there, but, there's like, in my case, they were sewed back up. But yeah, so it had to stay open and closed naturally versus sewed closed.
Okay.
And so it had to be cleaned. And so I had to stay there. So I said, if I have to stay here, I want to recover by a waterfall. And sure enough, the next day, Homes and Land magazine, because I was really good at manifesting back then. It was pretty amazing that I could just manifest anything. So sure enough, Homes and Land magazines, 3 houses, 8 acres, private waterfall and river for sale and for rent. So I got out of the hospital like 10 days later and went to see this place, rented the whole place, moved in, and within a month made a deal with the lady to buy it. And I never went back to California. My partner went and sold all my stuff there.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. Did you sell everything back in Cali? Okay.
Sold everything in California except the house in Big Bear, which I kept for another year. But everything else got sold. And I never went back. I never saw all those houses in Palm Springs and stuff. I saw the house in Big Bear once afterwards. But so that was really the beginning for me of this spiritual journey that was going to involve a huge ego death, is the best way to say it. Because I had all this money and all this success.
Right.
And then what happened, I bought this amazing property and it was amazing. And Steven Spielberg, they came and they filmed Indiana Jones' Kingdom of the Crystal Skull there. So they rented my property and I got to meet all these cool people. And remember, I was an actor in LA, but I never met him in LA or anything close to that. All of a sudden I'm here in Hilo when I don't care anymore. And I got George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy and all these amazing people. And So I had this period of amazing stuff, but then I heard this voice, and the voice said, "Get ready. You're going to lose it all."
What? Well, now,
Yeah.
what year was this? Because the NDE was 04. You're recovering.
This was about 2006.
Okay.
2006, the voice said, "Get ready." And what's funny is I knew what it meant.
Really?
But I'm stubborn. And what it meant is spiritually. Get ready spiritually, because you're going to need all your spiritual tools, because you're going to lose everything. And it was so weird, because also I had this amazing property, but I knew I was going to lose it. So it was like hard. It was very surreal. And people didn't understand. I mean, that's the weird thing, is when you start having these kind of experiences, most people don't understand.
Right.
And so that's when I actually, in Hawaii, they call it an amakua, which is like a god, a personal god. And in my case, it was a pueo, which is an owl. And you probably have heard about, like, owls. They signify wisdom or change and sometimes death. And so I started seeing this pueo wherever I would go. And it was freaking me out, because I really could feel that all this stuff was happening. And sure enough, comes 2007, that's when the financial collapse started.
Yeah.
And everything that could happen happens. Like the opposite of when I used to be this amazing manifester, now it's the opposite. I can't do anything.
Yeah, because you know what happened in 08, and this is so powerful, because I remember I lost, had rental units, and I lost so much money per month. But 08, right? And it's, as we're recording, it's ending on the 19th. Pluto entered Capricorn, but it was in your 4th house of your mother, your emotional mind, your home. So yeah, it literally transformed all of your achievements and worldly success, Capricorn, right? And just shoof, Pluto came in and knocked it all away, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was so crazy, because I didn't understand what was happening. I was
But you said in a way, though, let me ask you this, because you said in a way, though, you were really kind of ready and prepared for it, though, right? Because you heard the voice, and so you weren't happy previously in 04. So was this in a way like a kind of like come see, come start, like half good, yin yang, half good, half bad? Was it in some way a positive change?
Well, it is now. I mean, now that I understand it, but
Right.
not when I was going through it.
Oh, well, I'm sure it was.
No, when I was going through it, I'm like, because I was in denial. Yeah, I heard the voice that told me to get ready, but it's like I didn't get ready. And honestly, I still thought I was God. I mean, I have to say, I am my little sister. She calls me a cross between Eckhart Tolle and Darren Star. Darren Star is the one that does Sex in the City and all those. So there's this spiritual side of me, but then there's this material side, and sometimes they do battle.
Oh my God! Wait! I'll make you laugh. Darren Star. I worked on CPW, Central Park West.
Yeah.
Met Raquel Welch and Cindy Crawford, and and also then worked on Sex in the City. So.
Oh wow! Yeah. So you know exactly what I'm saying. Then it's like yin and yang. It's like, and so I had this battle, and I didn't. That's when I learned. A friend of mine. I told her, I'm like, I'm going through all this. I don't understand. And that's when I learned what a dark night of the soul is.
Ah.
And so I went through a dark night of the soul for like a couple of years. And eventually I learned that I had to go through this undoing, because everything I valued was really valueless. And so me, for my spiritual awakening, everything that tethered me to this dream had to go away. That meant the Hummer, the Range Rover, all the real estate, because
not the Range Rover.
Right.
The Hummer, that's a little excess, but not the Range Rover. Oh my God. Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
So
but at the same time, we know, right? And that's the deep thing. I think as we go through life and these different upgrades and iterations and experiences, our soul knows what is it that we really need,
yeah.
and sometimes you can get stripped down to the bare essence: food, clothing, and shelter. And you realize that that's enough when you have self-love and spiritual awareness and connection to God's source. And so now lead us in to the final NDE.
Well, yeah, and I'll just share it now, because I'll forget later. But about 3 years ago, I listened to that same song, "Believe" with Cher, and I was sitting there in my studio apartment. I did not have a Range Rover. I didn't even have a car. I'd sold my car. I had nothing comparatively to what I had before. But I was happy. And it was to me, it was just huge. But again, I didn't understand while it was happening. It had to happen. So in 2017, so like I said, my mom had come to me, and she just kept saying, "I am here to be the mother that I couldn't be when I was alive." Right. So I have to, and I will tell you, when she died and when she came to me, the first thing she said, I was going through a little bit of trauma because, I used to make all this money. Now I could barely even pay my rent. So it was the opposite of flow. And I now know it's because I was going against the grain. I wasn't going with what my purpose was. And I was like not accepting or surrendering. And I'm sitting there trying to remake myself again. But I didn't understand that at the time. So anyway, I was struggling financially. There was family drama. My mom told me, "You don't need to go to the memorial." She said, "Go here instead." And my mom was she was a florist. She taught me about all kinds of plants, edible plants. I became a landscaper. And so we had this love of plants. So she showed me this beautiful garden with these big, tall pine trees. And what was weird is it looked like, like mountain palm trees or pine trees, like in Utah or Big Bear, right. Not Hawaii. So anyway, she said, "This is where I'll be. Go there." 6-7 months later, my sister comes, and we were gonna go hiking to some places that I'd never been and she'd never been. And one of these places was at the top of this mountain that I actually look out at from my apartment. And so as we're driving through this valley, I started getting like major vertigo, like getting dizzy, and I couldn't figure it out. And so then as we're heading up this mountain, which is only like 3,000 feet, which is nothing, I'm used to like 9,000-10,000 feet. So it's not altitude sickness, but I'm getting dizzy and vertigo. And as we get up there and I get out of the car, I literally get out of the car, trip, and do a face plant on the ground. Ooh. This is how out of it I am. Wow. So we kind of hang out on this picnic table and I get it together, and then we go for a walk. And all of a sudden, as we're walking, my sister's ahead of me, and on the left-hand side, all of a sudden, there's this log, and there's my mom sitting on this log in these tall pine trees that she had shown me and said, "Go there." So they're called Cook Island pines. They're tropical pine trees. They look like a regular pine tree, but they're tropical. Wow. And so there she was at the same place that she told me that she would be. Except it took me forever. And so I now understand all of that vertigo. It was kind of like, when your third eye is opening, it's a muscle. Yeah. And so you can get, some people, they talk about ascension sickness or whatever, but it's literally, it can throw you off balance, which is she had done that. There's been other times with her when that had happened, but I didn't realize. So
now wait, was your sister aware that your mother was there?
So my sister's walking in front of me. I immediately burst into tears and said to my sister, "She's here." And my sister turns around and she knows exactly what I'm talking about, because this is the same sister that I'd been doing the email with, and the first one that I told that my mom was visiting me. So, she knew I was experiencing this stuff, but no, she couldn't see her. So what we did though is, and then my mom disappeared. But we're sitting there with my cell phone and her cell phone. We're taking pictures and she's sitting on the log, and we're hoping that maybe, my mom will show up as an orb or something later.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so from then on, she made it really clear she is with me all the time. But she still didn't tell me what was going to happen. So starting in 2017, I started getting sick. And I've always had pneumonia and lung issues and asthma, which was the first NDE as a kid, and many out-of-body experiences because I would stop breathing. So that's why I actually had gotten into herbs when I lived in Santa Barbara, because I was trying to, find Western medicine to heal my lung, Eastern medicine to heal my lungs. So I started getting sick in October 2017, and getting sicker and sicker. And then in November of 2017, so I haven't told a lot of people this, but because of all the trauma and everything in my life, I used, do you know what Copenhagen snuff is? It's
like the tobacco,
nicotine, chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know then, but I started doing it when I was 16.
It damages the lungs, doesn't it?
No, because you're sticking it in if you're not smoking it, you just stick it in there. It damages your lip. But the nicotine was like self-anesthetizing. So it was like helping me regulate stuff. And so I'd been doing that since I was 16. And I'd been drinking on and off, So anyway, this voice told me, stop hurting yourself. And I had tried everything to quit chewing because that nicotine is so hard.
Yeah.
I'd done everything. I couldn't stop. I could stop drinking for, a year or two at a time, but the nicotine was hard. So anyway, both of those things, I stopped cold turkey. The voice told me, it said, stop hurting yourself. And that's when I started getting this constant communication from my mom, but also God. But I was still in denial that I was dying, because I was dying and my herbs weren't working. And so by the time January came, I was 49 then. My birthday is January 6th. By the time my birthday came, I was in the ICU. I'd gone to I finally went to the doctor. My oxygen saturation was like down around 40-50%. And I couldn't walk. My apartment was an absolute disaster. And so I found a doctor's place that would come and pick me up. I went there. They could tell, like, this guy's in trouble. They called an ambulance, took me to the hospital, and then in the ER for several hours, they couldn't figure out what was going on. So then they were going to move me to a room, and but then they realized I needed the ICU. So I was in a holding area between the emergency room and the ICU, and it was like a room, and I was there and looking out on downtown Honolulu. And all of a sudden, the nurse that is taking care of me, she changes from this Filipino nurse to a Spanish nurse wearing a habit And all of a sudden, instead of outside downtown Honolulu, I'm now seeing this countryside that I identified as the Spanish countryside of several hundred years ago. And this nun/nurse thanks me. She says, "Thank you for the opportunity of helping me fulfill my purpose of helping people cross over." And it blew my mind because I was a mess and she's like cleaning me up and everything. And I'm thinking, number one, I'm not dying because I was still in denial. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not dying.
Don't you people get it? I'm not leaving.
Right. But then number two, she's thanking me. Like, she's taking care of me, and she's thanking me for helping her fulfill her purpose.
That's powerful.
And yeah. And so what was crazy though is we were back in time. Like, we weren't just in Honolulu anymore. All of a sudden we're in this basilica, like this cathedral, and we're in Spain like 500 years ago, and back and forth. So I didn't know this at the time because, remember, I was born Mormon. I'm not Catholic. And another thing I should note, a lot of NDEers, they say that you experience what you expect to experience.
Based on your religious background?
Yeah, right. So this woman, I later found out, was St. Teresa of Avila. And the way that I found that out is that after my NDE, I wanted to do a metaphysical Bible study class. And as we were doing that, somebody brought her up, and the name, something like hit me. And when I saw the picture, like, it all came together.
Because that was the image that you saw in the hospital.
Right. And then about 2 or 3 years later, as I was getting ready to give my first real talk and interview, I Googled her, and I went and looked, and the same countryside that I saw in my NDE is the same countryside outside the basilica where she lived and died in Spain.
Gosh. So it was like an instant connection.
Right. And so what I've learned, throughout, so we have a past life together. I don't know all the details, but we have some sort of a past life together and some sort of agreement that she would be here for me. And I'm still learning more. She's one of my guides, but that was the first.
Wow, what you got to find out is her birthday and see maybe where we could find her in the birth chart. That would be powerful.
Okay.
Because what's fascinating too. So when you speak about all these messages, I find it fascinating because you have Neptune and Scorpio in the second house. And that's like our five senses. It's our speech. And then when you have Neptune, that's how our soul evolves spiritually. You know what I mean? So like I could see where for you, the veils could be very thin in terms of communicating to the other side, because the second house opposes the eighth house of death and rebirth and transformation. So do you think that, well, I'm sure, but I've just got to ask, right? Do you think that each NDE in some way intensified and enhanced your empathic and spiritual and psychic abilities?
Totally. And I'm glad that you asked me and reminded me, because she's also an Aries. Her birthday is March 28th, 1515.
Oh my gosh, really? That's what I wanted to know. Oh my God. Well, that's that Moon-Saturn conjunction there.
Yeah, and there's something about me and Aries. Like, even my relationships have been Aries. It's very interesting. My ex,
because that's in the seventh house of relationships. And I believe you have that Aries North node as well. So yeah, that's really, really, oh my gosh, that's kind of heavy. So, yeah. Okay, so that NDE or that time in the hospital, how long were you there for?
I was in the hospital for 3 months and then a rehab hospital because basically my body shut down to die. So when she was sitting there cleaning me up, remember, she thanked me for the opportunity of helping her fulfill her purpose of helping people cross over to the other side. She's telling me I'm dying.
Yeah.
and
Right.
and I was like, no, I can't be dying. So then I from with her, then I went into the ICU.
Okay.
And then the head of the lung clinic came in and they're like, we don't know what we're gonna do. And basically then my sisters were called to come and say goodbye because I'm dying. And I'm not gonna
They had no answers. They just were like, your lungs are failing and this is it.
Right. My lungs had collapsed. And so one of my sisters was on her way to Kauai. She was going to go to Kauai and she changed her flight and came to Honolulu. And so she showed up the next day. I wouldn't let them put me on the vent until she was there, because I started having similar experiences to what, happened to you in your coma. And I thought they were all trying to kill me and I didn't trust any of them. And so I needed somebody there that I trusted. And so she came, and once she got there, I let them put me on the ventilator. So basically,
I was still conscious and aware enough, even though your body was failing, to have that discernment to be like, wait, you can't do this until I got family here.
Yeah, but honestly, I was scared to death. I thought I was in terror. I really was.
Well, because in some ways, do you feel, if you look back on it, was it because you were already going in and out of consciousness?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, and I was hallucinating. I was experiencing stuff from I say hallucinating, but I was literally going to the other side and experiencing where I just didn't trust what was happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't want, when they're sitting there saying we don't know what we can do, like we've tried to do everything and it's either put you on the vent or tracheotomy. So the next day she showed up, they put me on the vent, and I was on the vent for about 10, 12 days, to the point where they say you can't stay on it.
Right. They don't want you more than 12. Yeah, it's like really dangerous. Yeah.
Right. And so in that time, my mom was there. She was all around me. And then this song started. I could hear it in the faint background. And it was Tell Your Heart to Beat Again by this guy named Daniel Goki. And in that song, it would say, like, yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Tell your heart to beat again. And I kept hearing this song over and over again. And so, which it followed me, and I'll tell you later about how it followed me for the next several months. Which is one of the many ways they can reach us, is through music. And I learned that later, that
now when you say they, who's they?
Spirits from the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, and music is one of the easier ways for them to communicate. So if you're in a car and somebody's trying to communicate with you, they can do it through the radio much easier than talking to you and getting you to hear them.
Right.
And so, but I didn't know that until that started. But so anyway, I was in the ICU, and they were trying to figure out what was wrong, and they're drilling me for bone marrow and stuff. And I would literally leave my body at will. So I would go to the light. And so this is what's really interesting. In my first NDE, I wanted to stay away from the light, right? And there was darkness and there's a tunnel. Well, in this one, because I'd had so much of an ego death and I'd lost everything, I could go to the light at will. It was very interesting. And so I would go to the light, and then all of a sudden I'm above my body, and I'm there with my mom and God, and we're separate, but we're also one.
Okay,
And
so you felt that unification. Yeah.
yeah. And so it was amazing in that, like I said, that like I was separate, but I was also a part of them. And I look down at my body, and I look at this body like kind of curled up. And I just thought to myself, what have you been thinking about yourself? And it was the first time in my whole life that I actually had compassion for myself.
Wow.
And I constantly, whenever I'm hard on myself, I will go back and remember that moment.
Yeah.
Because I saw myself as like, if you have a dog, and you know how the dog it has a rash or something, you have to put the cone on it so it won't eat the wound, because they don't know what they're doing. It was like, that's how I looked at myself. Like, I didn't know that my thoughts and my beliefs were hurting myself. And so then, and I experienced this love that was so amazing. I mean, it's like nothing that we feel here, because the love here on earth is so transactional.
Right,
Like,
right,
I mean,
right.
people don't realize it's like they marry the person for what they have. I love all these traits about them. I want but it's
It's
like,
not always that like Neptunian Pisces, Agape, Book of Ephesians, Christ-like love. Yeah.
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And on the other side, it's like, you are loved. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you have all these degrees. It doesn't matter if you have a Hummer or a Range Rover or a Pinto. You are loved.
Or as I used to say, Mutton Jeff.
Right.
Wow.
And so it was so amazing. And so I'm sitting there dying. My sisters they've gone to my apartment and thrown everything away. Literally.
Wow.
Because I'm not expected to come out of the ICU. The head of the lung clinic, it took me a while to even go see him later, because the fear that he mirrored back to me, I mean, he basically was telling me with his eyes, you're dying. There's nothing we can do. So
how did you make it through?
Once again, it was like, I knew that I had things to do. And I knew that I came here to do things that I hadn't completed. So I basically begged, and I basically, but I didn't know. I did not know if I was going to get to stay or go.
But let me ask you this. Do you think some of it is like the faith of wanting to live, but also a human's will, the will? Because I know for me, right, I didn't see darkness. I saw movie vignettes, and I didn't see like the light. I did call on God and Jesus, who now I call by his real name, Yeshua. But the point is, for me, and I wonder with this for you, like for me, I've always had this strong will. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for 3 digits, right? You're not taking me out. I'm not dying. And I gotta believe, with all you went through and against all those odds and everyone looking at you like, oh, this guy's gone, your family throwing out your stuff, the lung specialist like, oh, this guy's done with, but you weren't done because you never gave up, right?
And
Your
I had hope. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people, when they give up hope, is when they die.
Okay.
But I had hope. But it soon became clear that I had the choice. I could go. I didn't have to stay if I didn't want to, but I wanted to. I don't know why, but I like this experience.
Right? You see, that's interesting, because you said that earlier as we started the podcast, right? That that a lot of people get a choice, and I don't feel like I was presented a choice. And maybe I was, and it was more subconscious. I felt like maybe that choice was the faith over the fear. And even though things seemed so dark, that I never quit on my wife and my marriage, never quit on my kids, I just never gave, like the whole time it was like that fight, you know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, there was no clear, I didn't know that I was on the other side. I thought it was still real life.
Right.
So that's where I think for me, I find it kind of not confusing, but just very different from yours and all the stories that I hear. And I'm trying to kind of, it's like a big puzzle you're trying to solve, And
Right.
I think that that's so fascinating. But I can feel what you're saying so strongly, that hope. But I think it was that will, because you never did give up, no matter who was around you. And so with this experience, were you also still getting these visits or connection with mom in the hospital too?
Oh yeah. So it's funny, because I would be there, and my sister, and she comes to my sharing groups every once in a while, so it's kind of fun. Because back then she thought I was a little crazy.
Hopefully I see her next one. I gotta meet your sister.
She's sitting there in the ICU with me, and I'm talking about my mom and everything, and she's like, well, tell her hi. And I'm like, well, tell her hi yourself. She's right behind you, And so I was having this communication with my mom. Because she was there constantly. And that's the other thing, is now it was clear why she was there. She's here to make sure that I not only get through this, but it took me several years to through rehab and everything to relearn how to do everything. Yeah. And so she has been with me, and she is still with me constantly. And so what happened is, once I had signed all those papers that they're not going to keep you on life support forever, because my sisters are like, one wants to go back to her life in LA and the other one wants to go back to Utah. And so I signed everything that they're not going to keep me on life support forever. So they decide that they're going to take me off the ventilator, see if he can breathe or not. And if he can't, the only other thing that we can do is try tracheotomy. Otherwise, there's nothing else we can do.
Yeah, I know. I've been through that.
Right. So as they're doing that, all of a sudden, my nephew, who had died of cystic fibrosis in 2007. So when Steven Spielberg was at my house and I was having this amazing experience renting to them, my very first nephew, who had cystic fibrosis, died. Oh. And so all of a sudden, I'm in the ICU. They're getting ready to take out the tubes, and my nephew appears at the end of the bed above me. And all of a sudden, he's communicating with me, and he's going to help me breathe. So all of a sudden, he shows me an image of Foghorn Leghorn, which is that rooster from the commercial,
Yeah, I used to watch the cartoon.
Chest. Yeah. So he shows me that image of the chest popping out. And what he's trying to do is show me how to breathe. So he puffs up his chest, and as the tube's coming out, I imagine that I'm puffing up mine, but I know I'm not. I'm just laying there, big old mess. But I'm trying to puff it up, and he's showing me to puff up. And as the tube's coming out, he's showing me how to breathe in as he's breathing in. And as the tube comes out, he actually breathed into me from the other side as I'm trying to breathe in. I mean, he literally showed me how to breathe from the other side. Wow. And it was so amazing because I could breathe. I couldn't maintain saturation though. Like it was still like it didn't. So I had to wear an oxygen mask for another month or so, but I could breathe. And so.
But they had you on the trach though.
No, they didn't have to do the trach because I could breathe.
Because you could breathe. So you
Right when they
avoided the
took the
trach.
tube out.
Oh.
So literally my nephew breathed into me from the other side and showed me how to breathe.
That is so powerful. It's so deep. It gives me like chills. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, see, it's very different and it's so fascinating, you know? I mean, you were kind of in and out of consciousness, but you were very present for your NDE. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I wasn't present at all, not in this realm. You know what I mean? So it's like so wild. But that connection with the nephew, that's very powerful. So I know that the journey and the process and everything since then, but then how did this take you to getting involved to speaking about your NDE and involved in IONS, and then now, you know, hosting the sharing group and share with the audience what it is and really what it means to you and how you kind of got there, because I know that there was a time period. Explain how all that manifested.
Right. So what happened after that is I was spending more time on the other side than this side. I was in the hospital for another 2 months when angels in angel form, but also in human form, were visiting me. I would have people that to the outside world looked like a normal person, but I knew it wasn't. And they would come and they would give me blessing. It was so amazing. I mean, wherever I went, people were blessing me. And I started so what I was experiencing is this whole host of people that had passed on from the other side, and my guides and angels I didn't even know, who were helping me get through this. And of course, my mother was there. So I was in the hospital trying to recover because I had to be able to breathe on my own and maintain saturation. So once I got that, this one guy that would come and give me blessings that I knew was an angel in a body. And he would give me blessings, and we were waiting. My sisters left, they had to go back, and we didn't know if I was going to go in a convalescent home or rehab center. The only way I was going to go in a rehab center is if I could walk, and I had to relearn how to sit up, to eat, you know, of course, to breathe and to walk. And it was a long process.
I know.
And what was really cool is
people just take that for granted so easily, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And literally for a couple of years later, I could get high just breathing, just being able to breathe, not being on the vent. It was like this euphoric high and the serotonin rush. And it was so hard to explain, but it was like, oh my gosh.
So wait, I got to
really get high just being able to breathe.
About that. I got to ask you this quick question about that.
Okay.
How did it feel the first time you felt the fresh air out of the hospital and the sun on your body? Because
oh my God, it was so amazing. And you know, I have a picture somewhere because I was a mess. I was like in this cart, and they had to, you know, they had to unhook me. We had to like plan this whole thing for the nurse and a PT person to take me outside. But it was like I was a kid. It was like I'd never been outside.
It was how it was for me. It was like a miracle. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was everything was amazing. The sun, just being able to eat and to breathe. It was so amazing. And you know what's weird about this world that I have to say is, you know, there's that scripture about come as little children.
Yes.
But when you actually do, when you are that innocent, the world kind of looks at you like, what's wrong with him?
I know.
And so that was the kind of stuff I was experiencing in I'm talking to my mother and my nephew and other guides. And I spent 2 years. So I got out of the rehab and I spent 2 years spending more time on the other side. I'm one of those people, if you walk downtown somewhere and you see people that might be talking to themselves, I have to wonder if that's what I looked like, because I met living angels. And who knows, maybe they weren't there, that other, but the lessons and the messages that they all told me. And so I got to tell you something that's really cool. Remember that song I told you that was playing in the hospital?
Yeah.
Tell your, yesterday's a closing door, tell your heart to beat again, by Daniel Goki. Well, that song, I kept hearing it throughout the hospital. Then they took me in a medical transport. So I was waiting to go, am I going to go to rehab or a convalescent home? This guy that was a janitor comes and gives me this blessing. And he says, you're going to the rehab and it's going to open in 3 hours. Sure enough, 3 hours later, the rehab hospital opens up and I'm going to go to the rehab hospital. And that, again, that's how I knew this guy's not just a janitor. So they put me in the rehab, the medical transport ambulance to take me to the rehab. As we're in that ambulance, that song starts playing again. Tell your heart to beat again. Yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. So that song plays through there. Then when I left the rehab hospital and my dad came to pick me up and take me home, it's playing again. That was a Friday. On Monday,
was that song popular at that time, or was just
No. If you listen to it, it's a spiritual song. No, literally, this is what they can do. I have a whole playlist now from the other side, from my mom on the other side. It's one of the many ways that can communicate with us.
Wow.
And she still does it to this day. So on that Monday, I was getting ready to go back to the hospital to go to rehab. As I come down to the lobby, the medical transport's out there, doors open, what song is playing? Yesterday's a closing door, you don't live there anymore, tell your heart to beat again.
So that's like 4 different occasions, right?
Oh yeah. There was more than that. And that's what I'm saying is I was having all of these communications from the other side using any way. If they're gonna use an individual, this one guy that the most of the world would think is homeless. He literally said to me, he's like, you've been praying, and I'm here to let you know they are hearing you, and I'm the closest one listening, and your prayers are being heard. And so I was meeting these kind of people wherever I went. And like I said, like this guy to the world, he looks like a homeless guy. And meanwhile, to me, he's telling me stuff that only me and God knows.
See, that's like a movie scene right there.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so he's the one that I told you about that told me, he's like, you have to tell your story. And he's like, you're going to be leading these big sharing groups and telling your story. And what was funny is I knew that he was true because I'd had that message, but the small me, the reluctant messenger that doesn't want to be like, I was scared to death. And that's also how I knew he was telling me the truth.
Yeah.
And so I was having these experiences, and what I was doing is I was going to different like spiritual book studies, Course in Miracles and Way of Mastery, and then I'd go and I'd chant with the Hare Krishnas, and I'd go to the Buddhist temple, and I was doing all of these different things to try to integrate what had happened to me. Right. And figure it out, because I just and I would talk about near-death experiences, but I'd get people to say, like, there was this couple that I was friends with, and I'd see it all these and she said to me, she's like, do you really talk to people about this stuff? You tell people about this? And it was funny because it dawned on me, and I'm like, wow, yeah, I do. And I guess most people don't get it. So that's when I realized I need to talk to other people like me.
Yeah.
That had experienced what I've experienced.
But okay, that's so funny the way you said that and described it, because for me personally, I was so marveled. I had such big love and support, and my amazing wife and kids. My wife never had to cook while I was, in coma 40 days, at a hospital 85 days. Like my friends, my great buddy, he formed a Facebook group, and everybody started sending, the Uber Eats on all the cards. Even when I came home 3 years ago, November 20th, I came home, there were still food cards there. But after like I was awakened and alive, it seemed like, oh, back to life. Like, okay, Eric's alive. Okay, everything's fine. And right? That's just the beginning. I had to, go through months and months of rehab and rebuild and learn to breathe, walk, swallow, get off the oxygen, the walker. But I was marveled, because I know how my brain works, that people didn't actually ask me questions. What was it like? What did you see? What did you feel? What did you experience? Like nothing. It was crickets. One or two people here and there. But for the most part, friends and family, there was like no questions. And
Right.
it didn't anger me or upset me. It just baffled me. Because I know for me, if somebody was close to me and they went through that and literally 40 days and this and that, like the whole spiel, I'd be like, oh my God, I'd be interviewing them, because that's just
Right.
how my brain works. I would be so fascinated and curious. And I gotta admit, I was baffled. And so when you said that, and then, how we got connected and meeting you at IAMS and my wife meeting you, to me, it was such an instant connection and friendship, but I felt like I was at home around those people. And so when or how did you get connected to those people?
Well, right. So, like you're saying, so I was trying to talk to people about what I'd experienced, and they just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, even people wanting spiritual awakenings and studying all these books, they couldn't understand what I experienced. And the other really weird thing that is true is that you go to a church thinking you can talk to people there, but no, it's surprisingly. And there's a really great quote that I've learned since then that helps me to understand, and it says, ask not the sparrow where the eagle soars. And so it's like you've experienced this amazing. Most people don't get to experience this. Maybe 10% or less get to experience this. And so
I'm sure it's less.
they can't even fathom where you've been. So of course they're not going to ask.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the people that I would talk to, they just kind of look at me a little cross-eyed. And then what would happen is also their dead relatives would start coming to me. So I'm also getting these messages from, and what's interesting is that's not very settling to some people. If they're not looking for a reading and they don't even believe in that, and all of a sudden they're dead aunts coming to you, and that happened to me. So I realized, okay, at some point, because I thought I was going to go back to my old life, and I realized no, nothing's
going back.
going to be the same. I'm talking to dead people. I have all of these experiences that most people don't get, but I know that there's other people. So luckily I had a friend that was listening to me, and I met a woman here that had an NDE, and she did channeling. And so, I got to talk to her, and then so I decided I'm going to start a little sharing group. So I started a little sharing group here. Like 4 or 5 people came, and it was just me and this other guy that had an NDE. Everyone else hadn't. And so it just started growing and growing. And then when COVID came, we went online. And that's when I joined with other islands and joined the whole thing. And now it's called Hawaiian Islands, but we have people from all over the world. Literally all corners of the world come here, online to our meetings. Yeah. And we have sharing groups, and we have then speaker events, which of course you've spoken at. Yeah. And
it's
I started
great thing that you're doing, a great platform. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's literally, I started it selfishly because I needed to talk to people that had had these experiences. And still, it's been almost 5 years. And it's like, I constantly, in these sharing groups and stuff, I'll hear things, and like when I was talking to your wife, to Alana, at the IONS conference, it's like she was telling things about your experience that actually reminded me of stuff that I haven't talked about. And that's what's so great about these sharing groups is that we've all had these experiences, and we can help each other heal. We help each other remember.
Yes.
And so it's become my, because what I found is we all heal together.
Well, share with the audience, if someone, how they can email you and maybe even receive some guidance and coaching from you, but also, to come to your sharing group, share your information with the audience, because, there's a lot of people out there who maybe their throat chakra is closed, and maybe they had an NDE or a STE, right? Spiritual transformative experience from a loved one that passed. I just had a podcast guest on who she lost her husband in 2020. And there's a lot of people out there, Shaun, they don't know where to go. So please share with them how they can connect with you and things that you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's why I'm doing it, because I was one of those people. And, the first thing that's really important is, yes, a lot of us have had near-death experiences, but you don't have to have had a near-death experience. There's so many spiritually transformative experiences that are here for us to help us wake up. Yeah. The death of a loved one, that can cause an awakening. You can have the same kind of experience that you can have in an NDE. I mean, NDEs are a little different, but the similar effects. Yeah. And UFO experiences can cause an awakening. Kundalini awakenings, all that kind of stuff. So we welcome everybody. You don't have to have had just an NDE. And you can go to either the Hawaiian Islands website, which is hawaiianislands.com, or we'll put a link right in the chat here. Yeah. There's a bit.ly link that you can connect with me. And what I really like to do, and this is my purpose, is to help other people who have been where I've been, and that are having spiritual emergencies, and you're like edge walking on, with the other side, and you think you're crazy. I was like, no, you're not crazy.
No, you're not.
You're actually experiencing the real world on the other side.
Yes.
This is the insane world.
Yes.
And so I help people, it's an extension of the sharing group, but it's more personal, one-on-one. And then also people going through grief, loss of a loved one. I can connect. This is the only kind of mediumship that I really like. I don't tell futures or stuff like that, but I love if somebody has lost a loved one. And it started just because it started whether I liked it or not. Loved ones or friends, loved ones were coming through.
Everybody's knocking on the door like, hey, wake up, I got to tell you something.
Right. And so then they would recommend me to friends, and so there's nothing more beautiful than when you connect with somebody from the other side, and the love. So I'll tell you just real quick, this guy from Egypt, he called me, and he was a friend of a friend of a friend, and he wanted me to connect with his mother who had died. He lives here in the mainland, but she still lives in Egypt, lived in Egypt.
Right.
So I connected with her, and it was so cool because she lived like in the old city and the old part of town, and I could see that. But here's what was really cool. She had been really mean to him in life a lot of times. But what came out of this whole thing is that in their pre-birth plan, they had chosen this relationship to help him wake up. And so she showed how much she loved him. And the love from this mother to her son was so strong and so powerful, I couldn't even talk. I started to cry. It was so strong. And it was like, so to me, that's just the most beautiful thing. Yeah. Is when I can connect. And that's one of the messages that I really want people to know, is that you're not alone. They are with us, they're around us, and they're here to help us. Yeah. You know, we just gotta do whatever we can to listen, to hear them, whether it be a song on the radio, or they talk through somebody else, or you know, they drop a feather or whatever.
So I want to ask you this. So honey, what's your email so people could reach out to you?
Shaun Lether at gmail.com.
Okay. And spell that all out for everyone.
ShaunLether at gmail.com. Just like if you look up my name in the thing, Shaun Lether at Gmail.
No, I know it's there. I just like to let people, you know, sometimes they're on their phones and it's so small they can't read it. So I just want them to hear it.
And that is the easiest way.
Yeah, and I'll have it down in the description down below. But also, when you say that and be open, but do you feel that when people take time to be still, do breath work and meditate, can they more easily connect and open up to potentially connect with their ancestors that have passed away?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's all about quieting all that constant chatter in your mind.
Yeah.
Just all of that ego stuff, and quiet that down so that then we can hear them, because they're always trying to communicate with us. It's just we got to silence all of the chatter that's not them.
Yeah. It's powerful when you say that, because I know when my mom's around, and I know she's around all the time, but there's certain times where it's so clear and I feel her, and certain things will happen and I'm just like, okay, Ma, I know. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It just it's powerful. But you know what you shared with us today was so powerful and so inspiring. So as we wrap up, I want you to, you know, give that message of hope to the collective, and you know, what would you say for people going through tough times now? There's a lot of fear on the planet. There's a lot of people so upset after the election. There's a lot of people like not knowing where life is headed in 2025. What say Shaun about all that, and give them some inspiration and hope?
You know, to break it down in its simplest form, anything that doesn't make you feel love and joy and doesn't feel good is not of the spirit.
Amen.
And so all this stuff about what the president's gonna do or this, that, and the other, it's not real. It's literally it's designed to take you out of peace and joy. So that's the biggest thing. And that, you know, and it takes a while for people to really understand that.
Yeah.
That if you feel bad, if you're not in joy and at peace and feeling love, then you're listening to the ego. You're not listening to the spirit.
Yes.
And so really that's the most important thing that I can say. Anytime you feel anxious and restricted, and you know, that's not the spirit. That's, you know, and just, you know, choose again. Because I mean, we have all this. That's the biggest thing, is the other side. They're always here to help us. if we just will listen. But if you're listening to, MSNBC, God's not gonna, you're not gonna hear God.
I tell them, turn the television off. It serves no purpose.
Right.
There's some days I never turn it on. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still half Cro-Magnon man. I like my football on Sunday. and that's my peace. But even that is a spiritual experience for me, because that's how I feel like I connect with my dad,
Right, yeah.
But besides
and it
that,
can be a whole family thing that you do together.
Yeah. But honestly, you're so right, Shaun. Besides that, like like you, being a professional actor and this and that, like I don't even watch this, I don't mind watching a good movie, but I don't seek it out. Like I don't care about, what's the new this and the new that.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me anymore. It just doesn't. And it's something that I never thought I would say, but it's the case. And so you're right. I just stay in that peace, that love, that joy, and that self-love,
Yeah. And it's like, my old life, it was all about marketing and everything. And that's what marketing is supposed to do. It's supposed to make you feel something. And fear is a motivator. And so if people understand, they're trying to make you afraid. That's the whole, and it's so low vibrational.
Yeah.
And I hate to even use that word, but there's no better word.
It's no better. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, listen, I know that people would be inspired, and I definitely would tell people that you gotta connect with Shaun, because not only is his sharing group so amazing, but he definitely gets insights and messages. And Shaun is the great connector. He connects people with people here, people that all over the world. Like, and I just love, how we connected through our friend Loretta, who's amazing. And then you connected me to Karen, and we both know Elle, and all this community and these people. But it's kind of like this community of loving souls,
right?
Of real spiritual / human being. You know what I mean? And it's inspiring. You know what I mean? So I thank you, my friend, and I thank you for coming here today and sharing your heart, your soul, your story, your ups and downs, and that amazing bond and connection with Mom. And so how does she feel or connect to you in terms of with you now in these sharing groups? Well,
she and my whole team actually carries me through so often. Like literally it's them, and they're speaking through me.
Yeah.
So they're always there. And whenever I think that's the biggest thing. It's not me doing it. I have this team on the other side that is guiding me. I just follow the breadcrumbs of what they guide me to do. And
I love that.
And that's, so they're always there. And I think that's the most important thing that I can really share with people is everybody has a team that's there. Whether you know it or not, you could feel completely alone, but they are there.
Wow. Well, Shaun, thank you so much. This has been so inspiring, so awesome. And thank you for speaking and sharing your truth, because I know somebody watching, this is going to hit them. And you guys, please like and share and subscribe, but go follow Shaun. Tell everybody, it'll be down in the description, but tell everybody your YouTube so they can go and subscribe.
Yeah, so if you go to the Hawaiian Ions YouTube, and that's Hawaiian Ions, IANDS, you can subscribe to our YouTube, and we have speaker events the first Tuesday of every month you can come to live. And the sharing group is the third Tuesday of every month. We record the speaker events, but the sharing group is not recorded. So, and that way it makes it safe for everybody to come and share, and they don't have to worry about other people seeing it. So check out the Hawaiian Ions.
Okay.
And if you want more information, you can email me at shaunlether@gmail.com, And I look forward to this. This has become my purpose is to help people that are having, so many more people are having spiritual awakenings now, in whatever form, and it can be scary.
Yeah.
And many people,
time,
they
right?
lose their friends.
Pluto's in Aquarius. This is it,
Yeah.
November 19th. It's here, 20 more years. And I like how because you gave me a lot of insight. You know what I mean? So that's what I want people to really understand, is that, even though you mentioned that you were the reluctant messenger, I think you're pretty clear with it, man. And you have so much knowledge, but also patience and compassion to kind of guide and help people. And some of it is just by being just a great person, but also with actual insights from the other side that is so important, necessary, and meaningful. So thank you, my brother. I greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Really glad to be here with you.
All right, you guys. Thanks for watching. Share this with a friend. You don't know who this could change. And please, hit like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you've had any experiences or you can relate to Shaun and even his amazing connection to the other side and his mother. But definitely follow him and reach out, okay? Oh, you want to tell him your Instagram too, right?
Oh, yeah, it's the same thing. You just search for Shaun Lether on Instagram and you'll find me.
All right, great.
And the same as Facebook.
Oh, I love it. There you go. Thank you for watching episode 272 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. Thanks again, Shaun.
Thank you. Aloha.